thank you so much for all of your participation in the conversations and coming along today. We have a very special guest speaker in Australia's Chief Scientist, Dr. Cathy Foley, who's going to provide an address, and then after that we're going to have a discussion between the two of us, which I'll open up to the floor. So could you join me, please, in welcoming Dr. Cathy Foley?
Thanks for that, and Corey, and thanks for inviting me to address today this great gathering. I'm not sure whether I'm the wrap-up or whether I'm the light entertainment, but at least I get to have the last say. I also want to use this as a moment just to reflect and acknowledge the Ngunnawal people whose lands we're meeting on today. For those of you who were there at them this morning, Auntie Violet's welcome was so generous and very cutting in a very appropriate way. And so I also want to acknowledge the deep and unbroken connection of Australia's Indigenous people and their valuable contribution to our knowledge about Australia and this land. So, believe it or not, this is the third event this week in the Parliamentary Triangle. Last night I was at the AMRI Awards dinner up at the House 2, where they were giving out the Rising Star Award for the first time, and then of course on Monday night I was at the Big House for the announcement of the Prime Minister's Prizes for Science, and I have the lucky opportunity to be the chair of that judging panel. The winner, as you know, was Professor Michelle Simmons, and I think it was a great outcome. Michelle captures everything it means to be innovative in science. She's a top-rung researcher, and she's taken the leap into commercialisation, attracting investors and building a big multidisciplinary team to advance silicon quantum computing. And as you can imagine, this obviously takes enormous courage. It also takes the ability to imagine a future and a deep belief in the science, even when there's so many technical issues and engineering problems ahead to solve. And I'm sure I actually can't be sure whether a silicon-based quantum computer will beat the other technologies to the finish line, or for that matter, whether we'll ever really realise a quantum computer, but I'm very optimistic. But that's always not the point, because just by pursuing this big aim, Michelle and her team have already unlocked a suite of applications and possibilities. They've made the world's first single atom transistor, and then the world's first integrated circuit at the atomic scale, and they're the only company in the world that can manufacture electronic devices at the atomic level. Atomic scale microprocessors have a huge number of applications, and for example, they'll allow the manufacture of low energy electronics, and that will be absolutely massively important and useful as the demand for energy increases beyond things we can even imagine. When I read Michelle's essay in the capability papers, I thought it was a real insight into the complexity and the painstaking long work that is required to go into these advances. And this is the way innovation works. The end goal has to be audacious. The investment and the risk are very real. And along the way, the discoveries can be astonishing and also often unexpected. So look, we're in prize season at the moment. As well as the Prime Minister's Prizes for Science, the Nobel Prizes have been announced just a couple of weeks ago, and quantum featured there too. The Nobel Prize for Chemistry was awarded to 3 scientists who turned theory into reality with the invention of quantum dots. Quantum dots are nanoscale phenomena where atoms are squeezed so tight that they start to behave like waves instead of particles. And that opens a world of new possibilities. That discovery over decades of patient science is now being used in new forms of quantum chemistry. And this means self-healing smart materials, drug delivery, energy materials, and sensors. So you have to say quantum is at a moment. It's a moment that can apply to Australian science and innovation more broadly as well. So we can accelerate discovery and bring it through to real impact in clean energy, high-tech manufacturing, the digital economy, biotech, and other huge opportunities for us in Australia. Now, Minister Bill Shorten this morning made some points that I think we need to take into account. And that's got me thinking. So, we're in a dance in this room. And I don't say this just because my husband's here. Hi, Tony. Actually, I only discovered he contributed to the papers when we were comparing diary dates for this week. But nevertheless, I meet with some of you in the audience often. We come together in different combinations and in different ways and in different venues. We have really valuable and enjoyable conversations. We talk about the challenges and the roadblocks. We identify things that need to be done to move the agenda forward, to turn our ambition into reality. And then we come together again and we talk about the same topics again that are not dissimilar to what we talked about last time when we met. Now, I'm not sure whether you were into square dancing. It was a very transformative experience for me at school. Hopefully it was for you as well. Square dancing was certainly part of my early years in primary school. You know, you line up, you face your partner, you step forward, and then you step back, and then you do the do-si-do, and then you switch to the right, and off you go again with your new partner. It goes on like that around the circle of dance partners until you're back at the start, once again facing the person you began with. Loads of fun, highly worthwhile, not a lot of progress. Now, look, I don't want to suggest anything but the greatest respects for events like this, such as we're experiencing today, where our members of our ecosystem, whether in research, industry, government, meet to thrash out ideas, and it's been great to see we have been doing some thrashing today. Doing the kind of hard thinking that's needed to solve these problems and getting together to share insights and ideas, making the case and doing the advocacy. These are incredibly important parts of the process. But there comes a point where we have to commit. Now, just be clear, I'm not talking about your dance partner anymore. What I'm suggesting is that there comes a point where every person with the power to make a call must do so. And this is what I want to talk to you about today. The capability papers provide some really direct summaries of the challenges that we're facing. And you have to say they pull no punches and offer good ideas about what needs to be done to link up and to deliver. Through the papers and the discussions this morning, there are commonalities. We agree on the enormous opportunities and on the excellence of Australia's offerings. We agree on the need for scale, the need for an ecosystem approach, the need to specialise, to choose Australia's niche and knuckle down. As so well laid out by the paper by my predecessor, Alan Finkel. And now it gets hard. Let's think about Michelle. She described herself as risk averse when I asked her about this. But there's no question it took big decisions to advance silicon quantum computing to where it is today. And I asked her about the moments in her career when she had to take courage in her hands. She mentioned the decision, first of all, to come to Australia and the courage to be a lone woman so often during her career. She also referred to the enormous risk she took when she decided to combine scanning tunnelling microscopy with molecular beam epitaxy, and they're two disparate techniques that hadn't been used together before. This was a big bet on a new approach. She refers to the huge risk in time and effort it took to create her company and to approach businesses and corporations for backing, and her decision to become a full-stack manufacturer rather than a niche operator. Her career contains a list of brave decisions, and we need more of them. As a nation, we need brave decisions about scale. I want to see big, ambitious, deep tech manufacturing capability here in Australia. But we cannot hope to achieve this without scale. If we are to enter supply chains for semiconductor components, we need scale. If we are to take full advantage of the energy transition, we need scale. And if we want to reignite manufacturing or ride the wave of RNA innovation or lead the development of quantum sensing or computing in Australia, we need scale. And we heard in the session just before lunch that this is hard and there are a lot of things that would have to be done to be able to get there to scale. We also need brave decisions about where to place our attention. And I want to be clear, fundamental research is the starting point. None of what we're aiming at to achieve today, whether in clean energy, healthier communities, getting a rover onto Mars, would be possible without strong, curiosity-driven research. The real world uses quantum dot technologies that have come off the back of decades of work. The work of the Nobel Prize winners, which I mentioned before, began in the 1970s. This is the pattern for every endeavour in science, in discovery and in innovation. Whether it's solar panels, batteries, catalysts for hydrogen, advances in minerals exploration, all of these capabilities are built on decades of patient research. Our universities and publicly funded agencies do this with curious minds, following where the questions lead. But there also comes a time, as I said, where we have to commit. And this means naming the thing we want to build. I know we sometimes shy away when the stakes get big, and we also can fall into inaction. But the technologies that will drive our economic and social future are not benchtop projects for the lab or the garage. They're incredibly complex. They require specialisation. We have a tendency in Australia to spread ourselves too thin. In quantum technologies, for example, Australia ranks 60% above the global average for excellence. Fantastic. But we're 30% below when it comes to specialisation. Now, Roy Green went and talked about economic theories. I like to think that sometimes we seem to follow what I call the Vegemite theory of economics. A little bit goes a long way, and we know that it's good for Vegemite, but it's not serving us well in this new economy, where specialisation is key. The new technologies also demand speed, scale, complex infrastructure, and big cross-disciplinary teams, and a new way of working. We need a systems approach across government, industry and research, working from discovery all the way through to delivery. This isn't the place for all the detail, and I won't go into it now, but I can suggest a starting point. New arrangements for how data is collected and shared, which may include universal ways to access research literature, a focus on building demand in the domestic market, staying agile with changes to regulatory requirements, making the most of opportunities for public-private partnerships, loosening the grip on IP to unlock what Adrian Beer refers to as the vaults of amazing innovation and stranded research outcomes sitting on the shelf, and of course, new ways for educating our kids. There's a third thing I want to talk about today, and I've spoken about specialisation and being prepared to focus efforts on specific technologies. I've spoken about scale and developing new integrated ways of working in big cross-disciplinary teams. The third thing is the need to play to our strengths and leverage synergies. We have strengths, of course, in mining, and this is the reason Alan refers in his paper to the production of green iron as an avenue of great potential for Australia. We have strengths in minerals exploration and in automation, which is why we expect we will continue to lead the world in remote sensing technologies and in navigation in areas where GPS can't reach, in underground mines, as well as at sea and in space, and why we have opportunities in robotics. We have strengths in biotechnology, RNA and synthetic biology, especially valuable opportunities for Australia. And we have strengths in photonics, we just heard lasers, plasmas and quantum. And Simon Poole rightly refers to photonics as our hidden economic engine. There are great synergies between photonics, quantum and semiconductors. They're the trifecta that can accelerate advanced manufacturing. But we can't simply waltz into the door and expect success in these areas. They are strengths, but we only retain our advantage if we identify the niche, work at scale, invest strongly, and work together. So absolutely, things will go wrong. Not every project will lead to success, just as not every experiment in science will have a positive outcome. But, as with the ultimate goal of a full-stack quantum computer, regardless of the outcome, there will be important and many wins and unexpected advances along the way. And as scientists, we're accustomed to living with uncertainty, with null results, and this is ingrained in the scientific process. I'd like to see it more widespread in the process of innovation in Australia, so that we're prepared to back something risky and with uncertain outcomes and not fear failure. I want to see ways of operating that are more in step with the complexity of the new technologies, so that we don't end up doing the same dance as we did in primary school, but even doing it when the music has changed. So I know many of you share my views on this, and in their contribution to the capability papers, Emily Hilder and Tanya Munro refer to the courage to do things differently with urgency, pace and acceleration. This is a message we can all take away today. A licence to do things differently. A licence for courage. An explicit tolerance of failure and an urgency and pace to the actions we need to take. I don't know how to express it better, so I just want to say thank you for giving me the time today, and also thank you to Innovation Oz for creating this opportunity to have these deep discussions. Thanks very much.